You know, what happens when the headlines about our council just don't tell the whole story? Today, we're going to dive into matters raised by the unhinged councillor Kemp and uncover some patterns of spin, distraction, and this kind of hidden rule that is shaping our own community, right under your nose. It all started with a media firestorm over a massive $34 million power bill. I mean, Kemp was indicating scandal, mismanagement, maybe even something worse. It really looked like a pretty simple story of a council in crisis and blaming the last council. But the minute you start digging, a much bigger question pops up. Is the story that everyone is talking about a real story? Or could it be a convenient distraction from something way more important happening just beneath the surface? To figure that out, we have to start with the power bill itself. So let's pull apart what was really going on with his contract that caused so much panic in the first place. Okay, so the contract at the centre of all this is a power purchase agreement, or a PPA. And look, this isn't some shady backroom deal. It's a totally standard financial tool. Major places like universities, even the Sydney Opera House, use them to manage the risk of a crazy volatile energy market. So why would a local council need such a massive contract? Well, it turns out a huge chunk of our power, we're talking 70%, goes to running water and sewer services. With 13 wastewater plants and over 260 pumping stations, the council isn't just a local government, it's basically an industrial scale power user. So a big power contract isn't an indulgence, it's an absolute necessity. And you know, once you see that gap between Kemp's outrage and the reality of the power bill, you start noticing the same pattern everywhere. This is where political spin clashes head on with the hard data you find in the spreadsheets. Take electric vehicles, for example. In a radio interview with Chance, the mayor agreed with him that EVs had not really been a success. But the national data, well, it tells a completely different story. And the effect here is pretty clear. When leaders just dismiss a major economic and tech shift like this, it creates the political cover they need to simply do nothing. We see the same pattern with the council's finances. The official story, the one pushed in all the press releases, is one of green shoots and recovery. But the 5-year forecast, buried deep in the budget papers, shows that recovery is actually propped up by selling off land. Those are one-offs. They don't fix the underlying problem. This quote from my article captures it perfectly. That language, green shoots, it's a powerful political tool. It makes you feel good, but it distracts from the tough, long-term work that still needs to be done. It's a narrative that can be, well, dangerously misleading. Now, this disconnect between the spin and the reality isn't just about numbers. It has real-world consequences for physical infrastructure. Let's take a look at what happens when you try to hold back the sea. A seawall feels like a permanent solution, right? A decisive action, but engineering isn't that simple. Seawalls are really just a series of trade-offs. Sure, they protect what's directly behind them, oh, the golf club, but they often shrink the beach in front and can just push the whole erosion problem onto your neighbours. They are not a silver bullet. And this raises a really crucial question. When we build these hard structures, are we solving the problem for good, or are we just buying ourselves a few decades? It's a question every single coastal community has to ask. And pretending a wall is some final victory, well, that's just another form of spin. Okay, this is where the story takes a really critical turn. What happens when the various systems that are designed to let the public challenge these narratives come under threat? Who gets to speak and on whose terms? The council, well, Mr. Constance, is proposing a major change to its community feedback system. This cartoon just captured the public mood perfectly. The feeling wasn't one of reform, it felt more like an aggressive dismantling. So these groups, community consultative bodies, or CCBs, and they are a big deal. They aren't just random town hall meetings. They are formal, ongoing structures that give residents a direct line to question their elected officials and staff about what's happening in their specific neighbourhood. They are not perfect, but this complete destruction is a radical step. So, the proposal is to scrap these independent community-led forums completely and in their place project-specific working groups that are designed and controlled by the council executive. This is a fundamental shift in power, away from ongoing public scrutiny and towards consultation on the council's own terms. But there's one more hidden mechanism at play here, one that can fundamentally change who holds power, often completely by surprise. It's a story about the rules of the game. In the past, if a councillor resigned, you'd have a by-election. A new vote. Not anymore. Now, a system called a countback is used for the first half of the council's term. They just rerun the numbers from the last election, and whoever was next on the ticket gets the job. There's no new campaign, no new mandate from the voters. And what does that mean in practice? It means a new councillor can take a seat with the power to vote on multi-million budgets and shape the city's future, having personally received just 47 first preference votes. 47. So when you put it all together, the power panic, the spin, the seawalls, the fight over public forums, and the accidental councillors, you get a really clear picture. And it gives us a kind of toolkit for looking at our own local democracy. This quote from the source material brings it all home. Governing a city is just too important, the challenges are too great, and the stakes are way too high to leave it to chance or spin or to an accident. This gives all of us a toolkit for looking at our own towns. These are the patterns to watch for. First, are there gaps between the official story and what the numbers actually say? Second, are big projects driven by sound engineering, or is it political ideology? Third, are public forums being strengthened, or are they being weakened? And fourth, do you actually understand the rules that decide who gets power when a leader resigns? Ultimately, it all comes down to this. In any local government, there will always be the glossy press release version of events. We seem to have a mayor, a ruling bloc, and a CEO that loves spin more than hard work. But a healthy democracy depends on having leaders and citizens who are willing to stand up and demand the full story, even when it's complicated and, uncomfortable. So that leaves a final question for you to think about. When it comes to where you live, do you really know the difference between the official story and the real story? Thanks for joining the eye and listening to this video.